We are live.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Is Steve coming back?
Gosh, I hope so.
You stand for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can you give a roll call, please, Laura?
Mr. Behrens,
Here.
Mr. Christensen, me, Mr. Frerichs,
Here.
Ms. Lautner. Present. Mr. Noonan,
Here.
Mr. Popa,
Here.
Mr. Robbins.
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Walter,
Here.
and Mr. Jones.
Here.
Most of us.
Okay, public comment. We have Steve Steyer here, who's going to give us a brief little explanation of what's going to be a late addition to our agenda.
Thank you. I'm Steve Steyer. I'm the president of Leelanau County Historic Preservation Society, and we're the people that have the lease on the Poor Farm Barn. And I wanted to make the announcement that we have applied for and received a state historic marker, and we're going to have a dedication for the marker on July 10th, 11 o'clock. So I'd like to invite all of you to save that date and attend that day. And our lease with the county includes an involvement with the Park Commission. So I want to just read part of our lease that talks about that. A 6-person committee will be created to determine the specific usage of the barn and any related activities. Membership of this committee will be composed of the chairman of the Leelanau County Parks and Recreation Commission, 2 members of the Miles Kimmerly Park Subcommittee, with one of the members being a county commissioner, and the president of, and 2 members of the board of the Leelanau County Historic Preservation Society. So we're going to have a public-private committee, and Casey and I are bound to be on it, I guess. And Casey will be asking for the members, either volunteers or he'll appoint somebody. And I don't, there's no time set on this, but for my part, I'd like to see this get started this summer. So talk to Casey about it, and we'll be going forward with that.
Is there any other public comment?
The number to call in is 256-8109. There is no one watching.
Okay. Moving on to agenda additions or deletions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would have one, and that's approval of allowing food trucks in Old Settlers Park, a one-time issue for the Old Settlers Picnic Oscars.
And then the one I have is for board appointments with the Historic Park Preservation Society.
Where did you want to put those on the agenda?
One under the board appointments under Miles Kimmerly, just like, and then food trucks under Old Settlers. Are there any other additions or deletions? Entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
There's support? Support. Moved by Popa, support by Steve. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We have an agenda. Moving on to the action items. Number 1, approval of the minutes.
I thought they were good.
Move to approve the minutes.
Support.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to the financials. Everybody should have received a copy.
Yep.
Any questions for Scott? Any reports, Scott?
Yeah, we're at 11.13% of our budget. Nothing huge or outstanding right now, so pretty quiet, so. So I was on vacation for 2 weeks, so.
Scott, when we move on to wayfaring signage for both Miles and Veronica, which is right now waiting on the new ortho photo to be taken, will that expense come under printing and publishing?
You know, I don't know. That's a good question.
Only because, John, you
Nope.
raised the question
I
of
would-
dollars involved, so I was just looking.
Printing, publishing is like if you're putting a help wanted or an RFP notice in the paper.
What would signage go under? Wayfaring signage?
It could very well be office supply. I would double check with Jen's.
Eric, I'll check with Jan about where
Good try.
that money is.
Go ahead, John.
We haven't gotten the invoice for Miles Kimmerly yet, and if so, where would it come out of here?
No, that'd be a question for Scott. We haven't received the invoice
Oh,
yet.
no.
They're still working on it.
And it might be how much?
It won't, might be, it'll be 47,000,
47, so
roughly.
that's gonna come out of what, capital outlay?
No,
Or,
That was already determined by the county board.
the county, shall I?
Go ahead.
So the county board is going to pull, I think it's, if I remember right, roughly 38,000 out of fund balance to pay 38,000. Then I think it's like 9,000 or whatever's left.
800.
Yeah, that will come out of, probably out of our capital outlay, I think.
but if they put it out of fund balance, it has to show up here
We
then.
will have to do a fund transfer and
Right,
then,
she'll have to
we have
say,
to
okay,
amend the
we
budget.
added, if that motion was made, then it.
we won't do it till it's done, and then we'll do those amendments and transfers. And then it'll show up.
When the bill comes through. And that'll be in front of the board.
Yep,
They already approved it.
we did, but it hasn't been paid yet.
Okay.
She'll do that list.
Any other questions for Scott?
You make a motion to approve the financials as submitted.
Support.
And seconded.
Who supported?
No.
Take your pick, everybody. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Financials are approved. Okay, moving on to Parks property discussion, the Maple Valley Nursing Home lease, which is coming due. We all just got a handout on that.
Steve?
The interesting portion of this is the septic fields that are on our property. This might be a good point in time to entertain the idea of having them do their own fields and their own property.
What was the reasoning for him wanting to put it there and not on his own property? You remember?
Shall I answer that? too?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you.
so the county owned the nursing home.
Okay,
And the septic field was already across the road. So then when we sold the nursing home, obviously it was just on that side of the road, we knew the septic field was over there and we just allowed them to use it. What I don't remember is if we did like a 100-year lease or a 20-year lease, or you can use it till it quits and then you've got to do your own. Do you know that, Laura?
You have the document with the grant agreement, and it's a 15-year lease. It comes
Okay.
due in 2023.
Yep.
And what I thought, I brought it to Steve, the concern was, you're talking about a paved loop trail system,
Yes.
which could inadvertently go over that. So you may want to consider I think it's a 30-day notice that you'd have to let him know you want out of it, but you probably want to give him plenty of time to come up with some other
That's
idea.
Okay, so thank you for that. I know I don't have that, I don't have that one. Anyway, that's okay. If it was 15 years, I knew it had to be coming up real soon. So if that is our intent, then we should inform them that we don't intend to renew that then, and maybe give them time to put one on your own site, I would say. Because it is, thank you. It is, kind of a problem. It looked like, thank you. It looked like heck for a while because of course it wasn't mowed and we were afraid people were gonna drive over it because it wasn't really well marked. So I think they put some, whatever it looks like today, they have been mowing it at least, so. Anyway, that's why. That's like it is. We didn't want to sell them the drain field too.
Okay, makes sense.
So,
Laurel has more.
Well, one other thought, we could maybe send what we have to council to come up with some sort of letter.
do we need a motion to do that?
I don't think so, we're just kind of.
Just bring them.
We're
Bring a copy
basically
of it.
trying to figure out how to word this so we can get out of it.
Well, this says after 15 years, after the expiration of 15 years, then you got 30-day notice.
I suspect we need to start the process because we want to be able
He needs to
to
build.
be done with it, and he's got his new established field, and it's,
At the end of that.
yeah. We don't want to lengthen this any more than we have to.
Right.
This gives him plenty of time to put his own in place.
Go ahead, John.
Scott, does that field cause any problems to maintain in the park? Because I'm not a big fan on making this guy put in a new drain field.
It's in a fallow area of the park, and there is in fact 2 drain fields over there. One they mow, one they don't. I don't
One day
believe-
what?
There's 2 drain fields. One is mowed by them, and one is just, I don't even know what they use, so. But no, it's in an area we don't use in the park, but we do have plans for that area.
If we have plans and we're gonna put ball diamonds and we got that, then I can see something, but to make a person spend tens of thousands of bucks and it's sitting on land that the county had owned and sold to this guy, till someone tells me we're gonna use it,
Well,
I think it's good that we just keep it there. I can change my mind.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I guess my only point, I guess the only reason I would disagree with that is that if he does spend tens of thousands putting in a drain field, it's going to last him for 20, 40 years. And that really ties the hands of parks. Then for all of our future plans, we couldn't use that area again for that long. That would be my,
And you've got a point there. Why don't we have him come to one of these meetings and say, you've got 2 fields there, one being used and one isn't. We're looking at this list and it's on our property. We want to clean it up. Is it something that you'd like to get off of your deed? Hear his 2 cents.
This decision was already made when the county board of commissioners did not sell him the property. They sold him the unit
Right.
without this for specific reasons, and this lease was coming due, and they knew that, and he knew that. It's time to get out of the septic business. We are not in the business of having a septic field for a private entity. We should not be doing that. Decision was already made
Decision was made to,
by the county board of commissioners when they did not sell that to him.
we gave him 15 years to figure it out, basically.
oh. I'd still like to hear from him.
What if we can get them here at a meeting. I don't have a problem with that. I don't think it's gonna change the outcome, in my opinion. I've kind of known about this for a while, and it was always my understanding that he knew fair and square that when he signed the lease agreement that it wasn't going to be renewed. And
Oh,
he's had,
that it wasn't gonna be?
right.
Oh,
I don't believe, to my knowledge and understanding, the 15 years was basically to run out the expected life expectancy of the septic system and be fair to let him at that time not to have to put one in, but it was always my understanding that when the lease was up, and there was no opportunity for renewal.
Do you think we should call them in front and say, hey, here's what we're thinking, John?
Yeah, I think a call ahead of time before he gets a letter wouldn't be a bad idea.
I wouldn't want to get a letter.
My intentions were to personally call him as the chairman of the board and then
Go ahead.
keep working on the letter if he wants to fight it. You know, you can get a letter made, but
So you're gonna put the monkey on your back and take care of it?
I can give him a call. It doesn't bother me. I just tell him what's going on.
Yeah.
Forewarning.
He knows, this isn't,
Yeah.
he may try and squirrel out of it, but he's well aware of this. This is not a secret or a surprise.
Good.
Did that change your mind?
Well, I have a right to vacillate back.
Is there any more discussion on that?
Yes, I'd just like to add, when you talk to him, let him know we have use for that property.
Right,
A lot of plans for that piece of land right there.
correct. Any other discussion? We'll move forward with getting a letter drafted by corporate, and I will give him a call and let him know that we talked about it and it's coming due to it.
Well, you're giving them plenty of notice.
Yeah, I mean, this is years.
Yeah.
2 years.
Yeah, and like I said, he knows this is out there. This isn't anything new.
Because we brought it up a couple of years ago and talked about
Yeah.
that.
Correct. We were talking about trying to move the path to go around the septic field and not go over it and all that.
I remember that.
You're moving on to the Old Settlers Park, the small triangle piece across the road from the park. Steve?
What's it about?
The triangle piece across the road?
Yeah, there's a piece of ground that's owned by us, and it's right across the street from Old Settlers, and it's being used by private individuals as driveway access points for various properties. And I guess, we're looking at leases and cleaning things up. This might be something we want to consider trying to clean up. And Linda, can you remember the details?
What I know of this, and I heard about this after I was elected, and I believe, because it's probably, okay, I think it was in the 80s, 1980s, they gave them a 100-year lease on, and 100-year easement to use that property to get to their properties. That's really all I know. We've just brought it up several times in the past because we want to make sure we don't forget we own that little funny triangle. Even though there's no dwellings on it, it is used for easements. The problem we have is I'm really not sure legally where we would stand because that is their only easement for 2 of them. I think that's their only easement, maybe 3.
There's 3 of them, looks like to me, that building.
Yeah, because the long
Yeah.
funny driveway goes way out, might be one. So if they have no other easement, I guess they all knew it at the time, they're gonna have till 2080 to figure this out, but I don't know where we would stand with it. So, we're good for a number of years with it, and I don't know how we would clean it up, unless we sold them permanent easements. Or sold
Sold that parcel.
that parcel to the 3 of them. I don't, or maybe even 4, possibly 4. If you look at the one where it says government lot 1, that one may not have easement either, so. I guess that's where we would stand, maybe even 5 if you look at the bigger piece. And I don't know what the 05500100500, I don't know how they get to that, how that ever got split off, it's probably long before you.
That's
went to
John Stands.
Does he own around it?
He owns that big chunk around, all the way around it.
Okay, and he's one of them that has easement across our property.
Yeah, his driveway's down at the bottom there, and that goes up to that, all those buildings up on top of the hill there, that's his shop and everything.
Okay,
And there's that other separate parcel, I think his son actually owns that or inherited it, but
okay.
it's still accessed by that same road.
Still excellent. So you're talking probably 3, I think, unless he owns any of those other 2 at the bottom. I don't know who owns those.
Yeah, I don't know about those two.
So really, they don't have anything to worry about for another 60 years.
Right.
Should we have corporate kind of weigh in as to on what they think, corporate thinks that, is there a move that we should be thinking about doing? In other words, is there a liability issue? Is there an issue that we should be considering more than just the lease on it? I don't know.
Well, I think I included a copy of a survey
Mhm.
conducted. And it shows you the exact dimensions of the land, which really isn't conducive for park purposes. I also stopped by the Registry of Deeds office this morning, because then I started thinking, well, wasn't this originally deeded to the county as part of the Old Settlers Picnic
Yes.
Association? So I wanted to make sure there weren't any restrictions on how that property is used in the event that you might consider doing something similar to a quick claim to portions of those to kind of clean that park up. Because I didn't really explore any kind of ramifications when it came to liability purposes, but it doesn't appear that you would ever use that chunk as parks property. You're just primarily focused. And it would probably be beneficial if you had the chance to maybe clean that up and do something with those property owners. If it was larger, it'd be a different story, but it's so small.
Yeah, you could be right. It might be such a thing as where it was. So we put a bunch of the parks in perpetuity, and they can't come out of perpetuity unless 7/8 of the voters vote to do that, right?
That was a resolution, right?
Yes, but I'm sure Old Settlers Park across the road is in there. Did we leave this triangle out, Steve? Do you remember?
I can't remember how that went.
So it would probably go back, we can find that out, but it might go back to, the original donation, but if it was used to be used for nothing but the park. That might be the only big hangup is possibly we could get the public to vote to remove that if we had to, maybe by the next, in one of the next votes, I don't know. But yeah, that's a good question. How it was donated, if it was donated for just parks purposes, we may be stuck with it.
That is definitely a corporate question.
Mhm.
Am I seeing the measurements right? It's about a half a mile by half a mile except for on the road, is that correct? Because I see at the bottom, it says, oh, I'm sorry, never mind.
It's
My
less than
tongue.
that, I'm sure.
It's a 10. Okay,
Yeah, it's
all right.
just a small
It's
chunk.
Okay.
And I think it goes right up a hill if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there's a hill right there.
Yeah, the entrance to that driveway is steep right from the get-go.
John could buy it and then he could do the easements he wants with the other people.
Yeah.
Give it to him for $1 or something.
I'm fine with looking into it a little bit more, get corporate's opinion on it.
Okay, so where's the monkey then?
Right on you.
I can't talk.
Laurel, can you ask corporate to look
Yeah.
into what the situation is with it?
And what brought this to light was there was a recent issue with the dam authority where the property owners of Falling Waters Lodge wanted to get this teeny little chunk of property that apparently the county owned along the mouth to the dam. Is that how it went, guys? And they wanted to be able to get a quick claim, but it was in order to get a grant? Was that what it was?
He wanted to apply for a grant.
Right, and it was just too hard to get all the wheels in motion and done before they applied for the grant.
Yep.
So then that makes me think about some of these teeny little things that we have for parks that we should probably clean up. Does that make sense? So I can let council know, and what can we do?
Then who's gonna find that old deed on the park that it has to stay parked forever?
I've got registered deeds looking into that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know they're really busy.
So the monkeys was here.
Yeah, I'll try to remember to help follow up on some of that too. I'll see what I can find out.
That's what you used to say.
Well, Veronica has the same sort of little triangular slice on the other side of 641. Is that something we need to think about?
That doesn't have easements that go across.
No, it doesn't. It has nothing.
It's just a little piece of land.
There's no other issue.
That's a great question.
All we can do is stop
I don't think
conservancy.
there's an issue with
Just
that.
leave, okay. Leave it alone.
Okay.
Sleeping dog.
Okay, now that we know the monkey's on Laurel's back, we'll move on.
Okay.
Moving on to committee reports, we'll start with Miles Kimmerly.
Miles Kimberly has been sort of busy. We have the Wildlife and Wetlands Solutions people out. They've been out there for the past 2 weeks doing a cleanup. And I'm going to ask Scott, if he will, to give us an update on what the status of that is, how it's going. I've been out there several times myself, and the emergency trail, I will say, they've redefined that better. It's a little rough and everything, but Scott will tell us more about it.
They're currently at a standstill right now. They've got equipment failure and they're waiting on parts. They're probably 20% done. Got the E-trail excavated. They're gonna come in and smooth that back out. They've done a little bit in the golf course and they'll be bringing in chippers and other stuff shortly, so.
I will add that in the contract, they were going to use a forestry mulcher to start off with this on the emergency trail. But there's so many rocks and big lumber out there that they couldn't do that, so they brought an excavator in. And they kind of wrinkled up the turf a little bit, if you will, so they're gonna have to bring a bulldozer in as a second phase to smooth that out. And then the wood chipping will come and all that. So it looks rough now if you go out there, but I think it'll turn out fine in the end, as long as they don't have too many more equipment failures.
Sound good?
Any questions on the log update? If not, I'll go on to the grub shack. And, well, at our last meeting, we were gonna do an RFP for the grub shack renovation, but we just received a message here. And I'm gonna turn this one over to Mike to talk about it.
Well, I had stopped into the code office after our last meeting and requested them to help us out related to if there are any code problems for doing the things we wanted to do. So today, Scott was there and Chet, John, and Jerry Coleman. And so they came up with a finding, and it's, I'll just read that to you. Until we had this taken care of, related to the code and necessary step there, we wanted to make sure that we weren't going to do something that we would just then turn around and be in trouble for. So they went out and John said, the items listed below as major failures of the building. Notes this pertains only to the structural integrity of the building. It does not include electrical. The foundation is inadequate, which we definitely knew. It's on blocks. It's been that way since 1972. And it appears to be falling off the foundation. Well, that was built that way. It hasn't changed much. The rim joist appears to be rotten, which is true. Not made of treated material. The siding is damaged. The windows, there's a broken pane there. The roof is completely worn out. The ceiling is starting to fall. The roof eaves are rotten. So what we had figured we could do was to fix it up and make it look better. However, John says, in the opinion of John, the building would be better torn down or removed. And so then it's a cost factor. And so we're not gonna move ahead with the RFP until we talk about this a little bit further. Scott, could you address what went on and how it was there?
I've got Chet coming.
Oh, Chet's gonna come speak up, okay.
Is that excavator still there from the tree people?
Heavy,
Well,
heavy.
I mean, it'll take me about 4 minutes.
That's right.
It's big enough to do the job.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
When Miss Evans tells me to come, I drop everything I'm doing and follow her directions.
Best not to argue with a woman.
Oh, yeah. And you're just finding that out, right, Mr. Newman?
9 years in and I'm starting to get the hang of it.
Yeah, there's hope for you. All right, I assume we're here to talk about the condition of the building? Yes. I understand the grub shack has been, well, I know it's been an issue as long as I've been here for 9 years, and Jerry Coleman told me this morning he's been here 40 years, and it's been his agenda for 40 years. So, Scott, have you said anything yet or no?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. So after last month's discussion, I asked John Hitchcock, one of our inspectors, to meet out there and look at, give us an independent viewpoint, and then write up a summary, which he just did literally a few minutes ago. When I get done here, I'll make copies for everyone. But this, oh, you did copies? And Laurel's, as always, a step ahead of me. Okay, so, well, if you have it, then I won't go through it, but Scott and I and Jerry Coleman met this morning with John Hitchcock and looked at it. And as you can tell from the memo from John, it has a lot of significant structural issues. And it probably is not worth saving. So we look at it, and it's probably been a couple of years since I've been out there, but I was surprised how much decay has happened just in the last couple of years. And I don't know if all of you have been out there. The roof is in terrible shape, and that's not an understatement. And it's leaking. There's parts of it that are caving in. The foundation, parts of it's missing. Looks like the floor's been redone several times, just patch job. But as you can tell from the memo, and I won't read the whole thing, that it's probably not worth saving. From a cost perspective, it's probably cheaper to build a new building and get something that you want versus trying to fix something that at the end will probably cost you more to fix and may not suit your needs. But I thought it was helpful to have John out there. And it's interesting because approximately almost 10 years ago, we had a former building official come out there and look at the building, and his memo was pretty much the same as this one 10 years ago. That was just financially not worth saving. And 10 years later, it hasn't gotten better by itself. In fact, it's gotten quite a bit worse.
So if it's true what you're saying, which maybe I tend to agree with, it's an attractive nuisance. If the county should go ahead and take it down immediately rather than us to put in an RFP and get a bid, and and we'll do it next year. We don't have the funds to tear it down anymore.
Will that be up to you to make a recommendation, then go to the county board?
We can do that.
You want to make that motion or?
Anything else about the grub shack? Okay, the only thing I'd like to mention, Dave already has about the signage. We're engaged with them on having the signage updated at actually all three parks. And we're working with Rob Herman on that. And the aerial photos aren't quite in, but they'll be in before the end of the summer. And once those are in, we can do that signage. And I hope to get that into the 2021 budget. So not the budget, but the money from the budget, so we can get that done this year, and not moving on to 2022. I'd just like to comment real quick, since I have the floor, about the 2022 budget. And I've done CIPs for two things for Miles Kimberly. A dog park at $40,000 and a paved loop trail at $200,000 to $400,000. Those are CIPs going in. If they can get done in 2022, good. If they can get started in 22, good. That's great later. But those are two items that we feel strong about. And the other thing is the ball fields out there are kind of in disarray a little bit, and they need refurbishing. And that's something I think we should, maybe if we have funds this year to do it. I don't know what the cost is. Scott had it on his sheet, but I can't recall it right now.
You gotta put that mic a
Oh,
couple inches
sorry.
from your mouth.
Yeah.
Can't hear it.
How's that? Okay. Yeah. Refurbish the ball fields, and that's into the 2022 budget possibly if we can't get it done this year. So we'll talk to Scott about that. And that's all from Miles Kimberly, unless you have some questions.
do we need to have a discussion among our committee about, since we have somewhat of a consensus on this grub shack, do we need to make a decision today about
I
that?
think we should meet as a group and talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, we got, this came up, let's just,
They want me to-
meeting started.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the board appointments that Steve was talking about during public comment, I'm obviously on there. 2 members from the Miles Kimmerly Committee. Don, I was hoping that you'd want to be on there. And is there another volunteer from the Miles Kimmerly Committee?
To do
It's the preservation board.
Yeah, well, it's, when the contract was signed or the lease agreement was signed with the Preservation Society, we needed to set up this board to kind of oversee or come up with usage for the barn itself. And it was in the contract, so we're starting the process of getting this board set up and moving forward with finding uses for the barn now.
Does it have to be a committee member? Can I do it?
You could be on there, that's fine with me.
Excellent choice.
Or it could be a member at large in the public that's interested in it, in historical stuff.
I know I can't vote on stuff from this. board.
This is kind of an independent, this is an independent board from the, it's not part of the Parks Commission. And then there was supposed to be 1 commissioner as well, right? Melinda, I was hoping you'd want to be in on
I'd be
that.
happy to. Yeah. Unless Rick would like to, being, is this your park? Or do you have an interest in the farm?
matter if you want to, I can if you want to do it.
If you, well, I'd be happy to, but
Okay.
do it for a year and then see how it goes and switch over, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
You got that written down, Steve?
Yep.
Okay.
Watch out for Scott, he's looking for power.
You're the guy.
Yeah.
So we will, either myself or Steve will all get on an email chain or whatever it takes to get the ball rolling. Moving on to Old Settlers.
Old Settlers, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a brief history for those who don't know. So since 1892, I believe, the Old Settlers Picnic Association has held what I deem the county picnic every year, first Sunday in August at the Old Settlers Park. For the last several decades, the I believe it's the Masons,
Yeah, I'm aware of Masonic Lodge.
Masonic Lodge, okay, they've come in, use, it's now our brand new grub shack, and they cook the picnic meal. Picnic Association sold the tickets, I don't think the Masons made any money, but Picnic Association makes a few dollars to put the picnic on the next year. So last year, with the pandemic, there was no picnic. This year, it's scheduled for August 1st, but the Masonic Lodge isn't able to do the meal this year because they've got no way of getting rid of a couple $1,000 worth of food if we end up in another shutdown. So they asked for permission to have a one-time allowance to have food trucks come into the park for that event and just sell food that day for the picnic. So the public can come eat from the food trucks or they can bring their own picnic lunch to the event. So this all happened just like, I think I got the call Friday. Talked to Chet over the weekend and Chet's like, I think we can do it. So the process was we went to the Board of Commissioners last night and asked permission from them so that if we ratify this today, they can line up food trucks in the next few weeks because that's all they've got. If we waited till July, there wouldn't have been time. So it was unanimous last night that we do this for a one-time deal for the park. So I would make a motion that this board approves the one-time allowance to have food trucks come in for this event only this year.
I'll second it.
Yep, and support. Point of discussion, how many food trucks?
We allowed up to 4, maximum of 4.
And the
this committee will decide
I
which
think-
ones or?
Yeah, the picnic association
Picnic
will.
association.
Yeah, the Old Settlers will choose, but as I understand it, we already have one lined up to come.
And they're to call who?
I think they're gonna work through Davey Noonan, I should say. Let me say, still call him Davey Noonan. He's the president of the Old Settlers Picnic Association right now. So they'll line those up, but they do have to go through the county because they have to have, we'll make sure they have all their licensing and liability. They have to carry to come onto our park, just serve it. All that'll be done through Laurel and that. And probably Michelle Solano, who checks on the liability insurance, that's a biggie. And probably the first 4 that step forward.
But no more than 4, is
Right.
what the committee is.
Yeah, there's
Also
really
looking
no
at-
room for more than.
Yeah, that's
right.
kind of a limiting factor.
Use that triangle across there.
Right.
Yeah, right.
No room for the party.
That was a joke. You don't want to cross it, no.
Are there any other questions or discussions about the food trucks?
Who seconded that?
That was it, Mike?
Mike,
Michael.
I think it's a couple, but that's fine.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries. Anything else under Old Settlers? Okay, moving on to Veronica Valley.
Laurel, this is a late addition in my own thinking. We haven't heard about 2% allocations from the tribe.
No, and it's whenever it hits. It's never consistent.
That's what I thought. I did meet with the couple who operate the City Girls Farm, which will be providing the goats, should that 2% allocation come through for Bill Watson's plan. We identified the principal area that they would work the goats for 2 weeks. Once again, the goats are brought in each morning, removed late in the afternoon, housed somewhere else. They're watched and managed full-time each day by the City Girls Farm crew. They'll eat pretty much everything they run into except grass. I guess goats in general don't like grass, they eat other things, but they will eat all the knapweed, the buckthorn, autumn olive, which will require some additional management. Some of that will, if this grant comes through, as you would call it, it's 2 weeks with the goats and 2 weeks of Bill Watson's field crew, and they will, as the goats progress, they will do some determination about permanent destruction of the autumn olives that the goats have eaten, in terms of painting it with herbicide. But anyway, that's all going down. I don't have a schedule when the goats would be here because they're working backwards from a fixed date in September and planning backwards what order they'll do the jobs in, and they still don't know whether the grant money's coming through anyway. So the timing of that work is up in the air. The spray for pond weeds was to occur on June 3rd. The crew arrived and determined that there was no need for spray this year. No evidence of milfoil in any of the ponds. The contract is good for a year. It never included the back ponds. In working with the tech that day, number one, I learned a number of things about the contents of them and the weeds that were in our pond. Things are looking really good. Both of the techies were commented on the health of the pond habitat in general. They thought things looked very good. They will be back in approximately 3 weeks. We'll be looking the situation over again. If there's need for spray with milfoil, that's within the contract. It can be done at that point, and that's all to be determined. I've got word from Mike Kujawa, the head techie, that it would take so little to open a couple of fishing spots in the 2 long ponds at the back, that he would likely, if that's what we need in 3 weeks, he'll just slip in and do it with such a small amount of chemical, 2,4-D required, and he can actually spray it, just a big fan shape in both locations right from shore. So it's real quick. He thought he could do it in 30 minutes or less and use so little product that he said, we just won't say anything about it in terms of where it fits in. Just in terms of that, there's obviously overwintering in all ponds. There were fish in all ponds. In both the front fishing pond and the bigger of the long ponds, we witnessed bluegills spawning, protecting spawning beds. So the overwintering is, even if the fish aren't growing to much size, it's substantial. I mean, there are fish there with some age to them. Principal weed right now is called Cara. It's actually a macro algae. It's not native. It looks awful. There may be some raking, manual cleaning of it near the shore as it grows this summer, but it's clear when it's just starting to grow. It's not attached to the bottom. It's completely, well, there are large patches, even though the surface looks solid. There are great open areas underneath it, the way it grows, and is excellent habitat for fish, even though it doesn't provide fishing access because it will put quite a mat across the top. Savin Lake Services suggested that some of the new tools that they're now supplying might be something we want to look at. I'm hoping to get, I don't have any literature or pictures on this right now. I hope Mike will bring a sample of this razor gizmo that's thrown out, drawn back, cuts all the weeds off, and then the weeds float to the top, and they have a floating rake system. Well, it can float or not float, they said, but from shore, we could manage a whole lot of this Cara.
I have one of those. It works really well. The slicers.
Oh, excellent.
They're as simple to use as it sounds.
Is
Just
that
throw
a
it.
triangle one?
Yep.
Toss
Yeah, toss it up there,
back.
pull it back.
Yeah.
They're not very wide though, so does it
No.
take a lot of throwing? I mean, is it-
Yep. I mean, and it depends on how much is there, but it's effective. I cleared an area about the size of this room in a couple hours.
Oh my.
I mean, it's work though. I mean, you gotta stick.
Well, with this in mind, I mean, the fishing committee of the Lake Leelanau Lake Association, I've talked to Lonnie consistently a full year now that I'll be coming to him, we'll be coming to him asking for volunteers, a volunteer crew. And here's an example of work that they could do. Lonnie and I have already talked about that. I'm meeting with him next week relative to the Pete Taylor bench, which I'll fill in here in a second. But I'm glad to hear that that works real well, because I think that's an option for our weed management, especially in the back pond. They both techies didn't think, from what they saw, that milfoil's ever been in the 2 back ponds. But the massive weeds that have been covering the surface the last couple of years are all common pondweed, a native pondweed, and would be really easy to manage with that razor and rake system.
As just an aside, we should be real cautious when the work is being done, that those tools are very, very clean to start and do the back ponds first, and then do the front pond.
Absolutely.
It's very easy to transfer.
Milfoil, yeah.
And they know that, but I just thought I'd say it.
No, I need to know that too, because I may be part of that critical communication between any.
Yeah, and have them clean the blades before they start.
Yeah, see all that. Well, I'll be bringing some more information about those tools, et cetera, but I think it's something that we may want to invest in, so we have it. Because I think we can find volunteer manpower to make that grading system work. I have submitted, I've put into the CIP, I've submitted the form for our parking lot improvement and upgrade. I don't know if that, whether that comes now or under budget discussion, but
We
certainly
have a
one,
budget discussion after this meeting?
A budget meeting, yep. Well, we're gonna have budget discussion, the next line item here, and then
So
we're gonna have
anything that we gotta do with the budget can be,
discussed, yep.
the committee got 10 minutes.
any other question about Veronica apart from budget? Now, I can start us off there, Casey, if you want.
Yeah, while you're going, that's fine.
The first big project we're looking at next year that has to get into budget discussion is the parking lot upgrade, which will include an upgrade to our porta potty service since they're connected. It's narrowing, it involves narrowing the entrance and making the parking lot smaller. Really coming from Scott's experience, the parking space that's now provided is just way too big. Causes him more maintenance problems and plowing problems than is warranted, because we simply don't need one that big. The cost estimate that I put into the CIP is $80,000. We've had verbal quotes ranging from 61 to 70. I split that and added 20% and came up with 80,000. But that's one of the big budget items that our committee wants to push in next year's budget beyond our regular yearly budget. So $80,000. We're putting out RFPs on the fishing pathway access safety issue around the old putting green, the main fishing spot on the front pond. Those RFPs will get out soon. And we'll see how that goes. We've had verbal quotes of roughly 15,000, but we'll see how that shapes up.
Okay. That's great.
I'm sure I'm missing something, but I need a question to remind me. Yeah.
You're missing 5,000, and it'll be even 100 grand.
Yeah.
What are you expecting the fishing area to cost?
15, that's a rough number we have right now, but
Okay.
Which is, that's something, that project we'd like to move on this year, as John has said with some of the projects at Miles. But we don't know a real cost.
Right.
We don't know a real cost.
Understood. I just maybe put this on the budget for next year as well in the narrative. Maybe we can get it done this year, but if not, it could be something for next year. Just trying to get as many of the large ticket items in the narrative as possible.
We're gonna try getting it done this year, but if it doesn't fly,
We're gonna really be looking to do it next year. I mean,
yeah, it might be not even bid on it this year, so.
correct.
So I don't think we have that in the current CIP for Veronica,
No, I don't.
but it sounds to me like I should get that form submitted as well before we wait for RFPs on it. Get it in at an estimate of 15,000, just so it's in there. Because it seems to me, this is why I asked Laurel this question earlier, it seems to me that I never really understood the difference between the CIP and the line item capital improvement, or whatever it is. And it seems to me the CIP is important because it's one of the first steps we can take in informing the whole Board of Commissioners, this is where we're headed. And it may be this much money, and it may be 2 years from now or 3 years from now, but this is where we're headed. And it isn't coming to you out of the blue. So I'll get this other one, I'll get the whole fishing thing submitted immediately, not wait for RFPs.
Melinda?
I just kind of have a question of, and I know you guys have had a lot more discussion on it than what you've just updated here, but I guess when I think of parks and I think like the fishing platform, that's going to increase usage of the park, and that's all good, and I'm behind that. And this walking trail we've talked about for years, and I would love to see that at Miles Kimmerly. I would just love to see that get off the ground and hopefully someday paved, and I know its usage would be off the charts. But the parking lot, it seems like a lot of money to spend on our parks, and I'm not really sure for what. It's as big as it is because originally it had a whole line of trees right down the center, non-native crabapple, blooming crabapple trees, and, so you pulled in, it was a loop, you parked on each side, but they didn't fit, so, and they weren't native, so all those got taken out, so that's why it looks as big as it does. So that being said, I guess my question is, we're gonna be putting the culvert in this year, which will naturally narrow up that parking lot. And if it doesn't, is this something we can do like in-house with chuck or hedge planting or barriers, as much as I hate those cement barriers, until something, grass can grow, or signage, something other than 80 grand on a parking lot that's not gonna increase usage of that park. And that's just the thoughts off the top of my head. You may know more, but you can tell me.
Well, I think your point is clear and well taken in that will the parking lot increase usage of the park? I think it'll improve the experience at the park. Scott, I think you're the first one to talk to me about making it smaller. Share with us.
Yeah, it really is overkill. I think we could put that area to better use for a kids' fish day. I could have more room for their tests or exhibits. It is a maintenance nightmare. I think curb appeal is huge. It looks deserted because it's so big.
Yeah. What if we planted a line of maples, like but something native rather than the crab apples that were there, with a line of, if we spaced it into nice size ones that would provide maybe shade for cars, and people come in and park either side of the line of maples, and.
Yeah, well, I'm not against planting trees here.
Just a suggestion related to that, Scott, what are your thoughts on white cedars? Because they don't grow so tall, they don't shed very much, and it's well defined, maybe spacing them, say, 6 feet apart or so, and then one in between in a different row, and then you'd have a nice perimeter, and it would really be inviting in about 5-10 years, as far as the perimeter goes. Maples get so tall.
Well, I think there's a real prior question, and that is,
Let's think about it.
how much of an upgrade? Our discussion has been about a real substantial upgrade, that is paving. And a better organization to the traffic flow, and including the paving in, porta potty upgrade, et cetera. So I think there are questions about beyond paving, but Melinda's raising a fundamental question. Do we want to spend that much money on making it a nice parking lot if that's not an increase in citizen use of the park? I think it's important. Curb appeal, quality of experience. I guess I tend to think it's still worth the cost. But I see her point. That's all.
Go ahead, Scott.
I gotta excuse myself. I gotta go meet a well guy out at 4-H, so at 3:30.
No problem.
Begging to get him to any calls, so I'll be there. So I gotta go.
No problem.
Be well.
Yeah.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, thank you.
I think,
Just a
Veronica
comment.
committee, I think, really hashed it around quite thoroughly. And I think it'll be a real maintenance improvement for our maintenance staff. They don't have a big parking lot to plow or maintain the gravel, at this time when the culvert gets smaller, this would be the time to entertain a difference. And we've really hashed it around quite thoroughly. And just a comment on plantings. Number one, if you put a bunch of cedars in there, northern white cedar, you won't see anything. In 10 years, wherever they are, you won't see past them any time of the year. And I think the plantings is something that we've tossed around a lot at Veronica Valley too. I love maples, I love northern white cedar. I think planting of them in certain positions would be opportune and good. Putting trees in a parking area that grow up and shield a view of the park from the street, I think is something that we would want to stay away from offhand. But planting of trees in certain area, I think would be a great idea. We've spent tons of time at Veronica planting trees in lots of different areas. Planting is huge there. But anyway, just off the cuff, I think from this committee, the parking area made a lot of sense with the culvert being placed at this time. And it just, for a lot of reasons, made sense, and that's why we brought it. But anyway.
Roger.
Steve, I mean, if,
Can't hear you.
is this better? I guess I'm looking at it is, if we're growing as a county, why would we want to make the parking lot smaller now? We make it smaller and it grows and park gets more growth, then what are we gonna do? I think we gotta think of the future. And as far as snow plowing, yeah, it's a big parking lot to plow, but if you don't have the traffic in the wintertime, you don't plow the whole lot.
It's not that easy.
Well, the decision to move, to think about a smaller parking lot certainly comes from our own observations, multiple observations of how many cars are ever in the parking lot. Other than the one day a year, at Kids Fishing Day, the most I've ever seen, counting my own car, is 8 at any one time. The new parking lot design would cover what, is it, John, 28 slots?
Yeah, I can cover some of that. This parking lot, and we're gonna present it to the Board of Commissioners for next year's budget. We've handed this out a couple times. The parking lot entrance is unsafe. It's 90 feet wide. And people are going around each other and la-di-da-di-da. And we thought of doing the entrance this year. And that was gonna cost upwards towards 20 grand, because you gotta do curbs and all that and dig the thing out. And the entrance has to be brought down to the legal safe size, which is 30 feet. So we said, well, let's just get the culvert put in this year. And then for next year's budget, we'll do the whole thing at once. Because when a guy's gonna show up with dozers and tractors and just do the entry, then he's gotta mobilize next year. So we incorporated this entrance into making a nice 20-car parking lot. Right now, it's about a 60-car parking lot, and we only use it a little bit. And he can't go in there, and plus the sign is in the way. So he can't go in there and plow and just plow a little bit without really widening it up. And he said, well, let's just plow it like this thing and have the overflow, gives us a place to put the bathroom. To maintain that whole lot, it's also dangerous. So one guy pulls in with his car and kids, and he drives all the way up to this fence. Well, the next car is way over there, about 80 feet. And there's no turnaround, which used to have trees and stuff in the middle, because it was whatever. So you gotta make a parking lot that meets all the standards. I wanna say AASHTO, but that's not it, might be. And to have just driving into a big airport isn't the best way to do it. Now, we're not gonna stop that from parking in there, but once you have a designated parking lot, comes fish day or school bus days, people can park over there on that grass or gravel, just like they can, but we need to keep it as a safe thing, and there's gonna be, I think, 20 cars, 25. It's way up there.
It'll
It'll be 10 times more than goes in there every day.
Yeah.
And then you need a place that's circular where the buses can turn around and they can pick up garbage cans, which I think we should take out of there. Did I say?
Yeah.
But anyway, it's gotta be smaller. And that parking lot itself isn't gonna cost that much, but 1/3 of the cost is making this entryway safe. The road is getting tore up, culvert shot. We'll get that culvert done hopefully this year. We'll get some good curbs. Otherwise, it's really, really unsafe. So the parking lot has to be, if you just wanna do the curb next year, then that's fine, but I wouldn't recommend that. I'd recommend doing the whole thing, and then when the guy's got his paver, he can pave that. We got some pretty good tight bids on what it would cost. But it's an improvement that needs to improve safety, the main thing.
So you're looking at about 20 cars and maybe a couple buses could go in there.
Buses, they come like during school and they can pull off on the side, and if they want to pull off on the gravel behind where the parked cars are, but it's usually only one bus at a time. Somebody's grade school comes or whatever. Fishing day uses the whole darn park.
Yeah.
But, you want to keep your maintained area small. You're looking every which direction when you pull in that parking lot now. You don't know if someone's coming this way, a kid on a bike that way, because it's twice as wide as this room. And that's not a good way to have it.
But Rick, you're worried about making the parking lot smaller and in the future it's too small?
Yeah.
That's your basic
You
point?
can always add on to that. There's enough there to add on to for the next 5 generations.
What do you think about paving it?
About paving it?
Yeah.
I think we got bigger things to do before we pave it. Paving's nice, but, I mean, you know, you go between the 3 parks here. We got a lot of other things to do before we pave that parking lot.
And the paving is not as environmentally friendly as if you had a good graded gravel parking lot. If you have elevation like a hill and there's erosion, that's another thing, but it's a pretty flat piece of land. And I think that the drainage is more appropriate there than if it's on an elevation. So paving, I don't think is a big an issue as the size. I agree with the size is too big probably.
My name is John Mulder, and one of the designs of the parking lot was such for a safety standpoint. To design it so it's only one way to go, and that's in a counterclockwise approach, so that when buses come in, they go counterclockwise, they unload directly to the grass area. And by maintaining the circulation becomes a big safety factor in helping, rather than crisscrossing back and forth. So that was one of the factors.
Well, we can beat this up. I guess my only point I'm gonna make, and I'm done, is that I think it can be a whole lot cheaper, because I don't see myself supporting putting 80 grand into our budget next year for parks.
Well, if you
It's our
don't-
entire budget.
If we decide not to pave it, that would decrease
It
that
just seems like
considerably.
there's cheaper ways to do it, some sod,
Less expensive,
something less,
not cheap.
okay, less expensive.
So that's gonna get submitted as a budget item, right?
Yes,
That's all drafted up already, right? With the pictures?
Yes. Yeah, well, it's gonna get submitted to the discussion.
We're discussing it
Which
now.
is today.
Well, I mean, beyond this meeting, as we get into the budget meeting that comes up, there'll
Laurel
be,
has to have that, right?
she'll have the document, yes.
The document that has the picture on it and the discussion.
That would be correct. If it.
Where's the monkey?
The monkey's on us. I got the budget packet right here. We're having a actual budget meeting following this meeting to hash things out, make sure we've got things in a row. I've got the monkey. He's attached to me very tight.
It's in the thing.
well, we've gotten good feedback that I wanted from this
Yes.
discussion. In that I've been solidly in favor of making that parking lot smaller. I've been solidly in favor of paving it, but I see the point. So this is all good. I mean, I think this discussion has been good, John, because we will take it on to the next step, which is the next budget executive session.
John, now, if you're looking at 20 parking spaces in there, how many have to be handicapped? I'm asking you, I don't know.
No, we got handicap spots for that, and there's a handicap outhouse that'll go next to it.
Right, but I mean, in the parking lot, by code, you gotta have for so many parking spots, you gotta have so many handicaps.
If you know your capacity, yeah.
Yeah,
So
so,
that'll come time when we're gonna paint it and stuff. We have to have so many spaces.
It was drawn to meet parking requirements. You're required to have one area-free parking space for 25 spaces. And if you only have one parking, very free parking space, it has to be van accessible. So it was drawn to be van accessible.
Okay.
That's a good point.
Are those spots, the handicap spots, required to be paved?
No,
They're not paved at Miles.
it was paid in lines.
It's not,
Oh,
no, just a road.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
When you get up towards those soccer fields and there, there's no paved. Okay, is there any other Veronica Village? Moving on to Miles Committee.
Sure. I already mentioned in my earlier report that for the dog park, we have an estimate of $40,000. I submitted a CIP for that. A paved loop trail that circles around the recreational area that's a mile long. That's a paved one. The reason we want to be paved for that is because it's designed for older people to walk, or joggers. It can be for little tykes on bikes, not kids, teenagers, but little tykes, wheelchairs. And it would also be good for ladies and men with their baby carriages and things like that. That's a design for that. It's in the 5-year plan. It's been there for a long time. And it's a desired thing for the community. I didn't realize it when I first got on the board here, how significant it was, but it's the number one item in the 5-year plan. And the goals for the Miles Kimberly is to have this paved walking trail. They have one down in Silver Lake, I think Garfield Township. It's Garfield Township, I think that, anyway.
Yes.
I looked at that and it's popular down there. They have a dog park down there too, by the way. I looked at that and that's where we got some of the plans and ideas for the one up here. Those are the two things that I'm looking forward to get into the 22 budget. I don't know how we do that, because I know that if I look at our budget now, the only discretionary funding that we have that I can see is for maintenance, contractual services, and capital outlay, and that comes about $97,000. I'm asking for a lot more money than that, and, you guys at the board knows how that happens, whether that comes just out of funding, whatever. And the other thing is with the Grub Shack, Miles Kimberly, you throw us a curve because we were gonna renovate it, and we thought we were all set on that. And now we have to rethink that, we'll be back on committee and do that. And like I said, to me, if you agree with what was said, this is an unattractive nuisance there. And it should be torn down if that's what's recommended, and it should be torn down now. It really should be. That's my opinion. And I'll leave it to any other committee members. For Miles, want to say anything?
Well, I'll add to that. We've gone round and round for decades related to the shack. When I first encountered this, doing a little bit of homework, it's been on the agenda for something to happen to it. As indicated earlier today, that it needed to be renovated. Well, as Chet stated, that was 10 years ago. Well, it was also supposed to be renovated probably 20 and 30 years before that, before this. And so it would be, I just mentioned to Don just a little bit earlier, maybe I wondered if we should make a motion, but we will discuss it, but it looks like the people that would give this approval may not approve of putting funds into a building that should be destroyed. So we'll take a good look at it right away.
Okay, is there anything else for Miles?
Just a point of, I want to know personal opinion. Rick, would you value the dog park at 40,000 at Miles Kimberly more important than paved parking at Veronica?
Well, no, seriously, no, it's a good question, but, when I ran that post earlier in the year on the dog park, I just threw it out there on a Saturday, and the response was like overwhelming. I mean, I threw it on Facebook, I overheard it in Leelanau County, and the dog park was like, the only one I got a negative response was my friend Craig Elhart, was being a smart aleck and, waste of taxpayers' money, but that was the only negative. I mean, everybody was like,
Well, and I'm not questioning the value of the dog park at all. I just wanted to hear the
I think, I
priorities.
think in time you could pave that, but I mean, I don't know where you guys are getting your gravel, but, I think I know where there is some good gravel. I think Casey does too. If you grade it the right way, it should last a long time until we can pave it. I don't see where we're having washouts. We're not having a drain issue there, I don't think. Do we just, Steve? So, I mean, we put good gravel in there, we can get by. I mean, people are going to a park to walk. If they, they want to wear their white tennis shoes and, they go somewhere where there's pavement.
We do have a dog park in this county, by the way.
Where's that?
Good Harbor, and then you go right at the water's edge.
The township?
Left is for
The township or?
Oh, that's in the national park, isn't it?
this county, I said.
Yes, yeah, I'm just trying to tell you where it's at, yep, up on Lake Michigan.
Who runs that?
You can take dogs up there.
It's on National Lake Shore.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else for Miles? For, Old Settlers, there was no committee meeting and
No, the only thing I'm sorry, if I can just add quickly, there's going to be a flag raising at Old Settlers Park. I think it's Sunday the 4th. Somebody told me it was Saturday the 3rd, and that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So,
that's what I had heard too, but I don't think that that's correct.
okay, well, watch the paper, comes with, it's a nice little flag raising done by the Old Settlers Picnic Association, is that correct? Or the ladies group?
No, it's the ladies group.
Ladies group does.
One like Queens Club.
Yes. Okay, anything, with Old Settlers not meeting, there aren't any real major projects to be done there. I mean, there's always, I'd like to have something in the capital outlay budget for each park. We have talked about some crushed stone, or parking improvements and whatnot, but there, as far as major projects, there's not a whole lot on the wish list at Old Settlers
And,
right now.
that is my fault for not calling a budget meeting, but I thought we probably could just discuss it as a group when we go into our budget meetings. But there is that, and we're overdue for some playground equipment.
Yeah,
We've been dragging our feet because we spent so much on the grub shack last year, so it was kind of like Miles Kimberly's turn this year, and then we'll probably have some more there, or Veronica, but certainly we should put something in there for Old Settlers. Those are two things for sure.
Steve, go ahead.
The idea of irrigation came up after the big storm,
Yes.
because we put a lot of money into restoration and planting grass. And since that point in time, we didn't know if it would ever stop raining. And so Mother Nature did the irrigation for us. This year, I just swung through here yesterday, and you can see the tufts of grass there, but it's pretty dry. So I guess I would lean toward doing some irrigation there. And I don't know, Scott really talked about getting a pump. I don't know if he got the pump. That was late last year. That he could have in the lake and attach to an irrigation system. So there is some potential just to pump lake water, which is very environmentally friendly. And you typically can cut down on nutrients and whatnot. The lake water itself does a nice job. So anyway,
Yeah, that's a good point. And hearing this discussion today, I would love to see these goats come in and eat that poison ivy on that hillside. If we keep them away from the monkey flower, they're gonna eat that. Boy, there's a lot of poison ivy along that fence there, and that always concerns me. It's an option too.
on the Glettler side there.
Yeah. Yeah, and it really starts like at the, I think it's the Binsfield bench. It's up
Oh.
in there. It starts
Oh.
clear up there and goes,
All the way around the corner.
I guess it goes north.
What do you think Glenn Noonan would say about irrigation?
Well, I don't know if he'd say anything, but the smirk would be enough.
Okay.
I don't think he'd vote for it.
It'll take care of itself.
The discussion would have been over with a while ago.
It'll take care of itself.
Any other Old Settlers discussion? Moving on to public comment.
The number to call in is 256-8109, and there's nobody watching.
Commissioner comments? Anybody? Chairperson? Chairperson comments, nothing from me. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are adjourned.
How long can you go? Switch over.
At least 5 minutes.